The neighborhood had always been quiet, with manicured lawns and solar panels gleaming under the sun. For years, the peace of suburban order had been dictated by the HOA, a council that believed it had the power to intrude on every detail of life. But peace, as it turned out, was fragile. It only took one neighbor to crack the illusion. That neighbor was Karen, a woman with a permanent scowl etched on her face and an ever-present sense of entitlement. She believed the world owed her more than she had. When she purchased a brand new Tesla, she paraded it like a trophy, claiming it as proof of her superiority in the neighborhood. Yet, with her pride came an unseen problem. She refused to pay for the electricity needed to charge it. Instead, she found her target: my home. I had invested thousands into my solar grid panels, lining my roof, batteries humming quietly in the garage, each watt accounted for. But Karen saw those panels not as my property, but as a resource she deserved. Under the cover of night, she would drag her charging cable across the street, slip it into my exterior outlet, and leave her car to feed on my hard-earned energy. At first I thought it was a mistake. Perhaps she didn't realize. But as the pattern repeated, it became clear. Each morning, my grid reported unusual power draws, and each morning her Tesla sat in her driveway, fully charged and smugly gleaming. When confronted, she dismissed it as trivial. She claimed that as part of the HOA, she had every right to share resources for the good of the community. The HOA board, riddled with Karen's friends and sycophants, sided with her. They claimed I had no authority to refuse, but I knew better. What she was doing wasn't just entitled, it was theft, and I had no intention of letting it continue. The first signs of retaliation brewed quietly in my garage. As I studied the systems, the converters, the safeguards built into the solar grid, power could be gentle, or it could be devastating. Karen had no idea that by leeching off me, she was inviting a storm, and I was going to make sure she felt it. The tension between homeowner and Karen escalates as unseen plans begin to form in the shadows. The theft grew bolder. Karen stopped hiding. She no longer waited until midnight to snake her cable into my property. Instead, she did it during the day, strutting across the street as if it were her God-given right. Each time she smirked, I felt the quiet fury building deeper. Neighbors whispered but dared not intervene. The HOA, ever protective of its loudest member, doubled down. Letters appeared in my mailbox, each demanding I cease harassment and embrace communal living. My complaints were dismissed, my evidence ignored, but behind their arrogance, numbers didn't lie. My grid logs told the story of rising theft kilowatt hours disappearing each day, stolen not by necessity, but by greed. My investments, my independence, my pride, it was all being drained by someone who cared for nothing but herself. It was during one sleepless night, staring at the blinking lights of my power system, that the idea took shape. Every system has thresholds. Every cable, every battery, every converter limits that, if pushed, could turn steady current into overwhelming force. Karen believed the grid was a free fountain. She thought electricity was harmless, an invisible friend she could steal endlessly. But what she didn't understand was that energy, when mismanaged, could bite back. I began experimenting in secret, small voltage spikes hidden in the hours of her theft. At first, it was harmless, a flicker in her headlights, a glitch in her car's dashboard. Enough to confuse, but not enough to reveal my hand. The results encouraged me. Each time I recorded how her car reacted. Each time, I adjusted the settings, calibrating the balance between subtlety and devastation. Karen, of course, stormed about the neighborhood, blaming Tesla, blaming bad luck, never once suspecting the source of her troubles stood across the street. And as her arrogance grew, so did my resolve. This wasn't just about the stolen power anymore. It was about proving a point that entitlement has consequences, and that when you push someone too far, even the quietest neighbor can become dangerous. The grid was ready, the trap was set. All that remained was to wait for her to make the next move. The stage was prepared for a confrontation that would burn brighter than Karen could ever imagine. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than expected. It was a sweltering afternoon, the sun beating down hard, and Karen wasted no time dragging her cord to my outlet once again. Her Tesla sat smugly on my driveway, wires running like veins feeding. From my solar heart inside my garage, I watched the readings spike. My system hummed, waiting for my command. With one adjustment, the steady flow of current surged. Voltage climbed higher, creeping past normal limits, filling the cable with more than Karen had ever imagined. At first, her car responded as usual, flickering, dashboard stuttering, but then the warnings began. A sharp beeping echoed faintly from across the street, alarms flashing inside her precious vehicle. Karen rushed out, panic replacing arrogance as she fumbled with the charger. But it was too late. The heat built quickly, wires hissing, smoke curling from the hood as the system inside the car fought to resist the overwhelming force. Neighbors emerged, confusion spreading as they witnessed the sight. Karen screaming at her beloved Tesla, smoke rolling upward, the air thick with the scent of burning circuits. And then it happened. A burst of flame erupted from beneath the hood, small at first, then growing, feeding on the very energy she had stolen. Her pride, her trophy. Her statement of superiority was reduced to chaos in seconds. The neighborhood erupted in noise. Someone called the fire department, someone else ran for water, but I remained still calm, watching as the flames licked higher. Karen's face was a mask of horror, her voice shrill, her power gone in an instant. For the first time, she understood what it meant to take from someone without permission. And yet, this was only the beginning. The fire was just the spark of a much larger war, one that the HOA could no longer ignore. The aftermath was chaos. Fire trucks arrived, sirens wailing as black smoke poured into the summer sky. The Tesla was ruined, charred metal hissing as firefighters doused the last embers. Karen wailed in the street, her voice carrying accusations. Blaming me, blaming the solar grid, blaming anyone but herself. The HOA board convened immediately, fury blazing in their eyes. They called it sabotage, a crime, an attack against one of their own. Letters became threats, demands for payment, threats of legal action. But evidence is a strange thing. Karen had no proof. She had plugged into my system without consent, with the board's blessing, but without legal right. Her entitlement had been her undoing, and while she shouted, the law remained silent. Neighbors who had once stayed quiet now spoke freely. They whispered of her arrogance, of her theft, of how she had finally been humbled. For the first time, the HOA's shield cracked, their power shaken. Karen's Tesla sat in her driveway like a monument to her downfall. A charred husk surrounded by whispers and pointing fingers. She had wanted to show superiority, but now she stood as the symbol of greed undone. And yet, despite her humiliation, she vowed revenge. The HOA doubled their efforts, scheming in the shadows, promising that the battle wasn't over. But neither was I finished, because I knew that in wars like these, one victory is never enough. And Karen had no idea just how far I was willing to go to make sure she never touched my power again. The embers had cooled, but the war for the neighborhood had only just begun. Karen tried everything in the weeks that followed. Lawsuits, police reports, endless HOA meetings, all attempts to regain control. But none succeeded. Each complaint crumbled under the weight of her own theft, each threat hollow without evidence. Still, she refused to relent. She installed new cables, new tricks, attempting to steal again, desperate to restore the power she had lost. Each time, I was ready. Each time my system countered, the voltage surging, leaving her with nothing but failure. Her pride dwindled, her influence faded, and the HOA fractured under the weight of her obsession. Neighbors who once feared her began to laugh, treating her not as a tyrant, but as a cautionary tale. And finally, she broke. One evening, under the setting sun, Karen's house went dark. She had drained her own resources, alienated her allies, and destroyed her reputation. Her Tesla was gone, towed away as scrap. Her power stripped from her, just as she had once tried to strip it from me. The neighborhood returned to peace. The HOA weakened, its grip loosened. And I, standing beneath the quiet hum of my solar panels, knew I had one. Power is not something to be stolen. It is earned, guarded, and respected. Karen had learned that lesson the hard way, and in the silence that followed, I couldn't help but smile. Because in the end, the sun always shines brightest on those who know how to harness it, tan darkest on those who try to steal.